I'm Bonnie Adams. Thank you. No, you're good. I appreciate it. I'm Bonnie Adams. I'm the founder of Swim Oz, and we are here today courtesy of the Ozark Outdoor Foundation. They have enabled us to be a free event, which is wonderful. So, yay! Ozark Outdoor Foundation. Really excited about all the amazing things that they've got planned for this year. The Oz Mile Swim is one of them. And so that's kind of why we're here today, is somewhat prep you for that, but also to prep you for really any open water swimming adventures that you are signed up for, or will be signed up for, or will be doing in a few weeks, some of us I know. You guys are going to learn a ton of information. There is a lot of information that we're going to share with you guys today. We are videoing it. I will be putting it up on the Swim Oz YouTube channel, so feel free to check that out. I'll also, I think with registration we have your email, so I'll try to send out an email link to that as well. So pay attention, but you'll be able to go reflect on your next trainer ride, because I think just about everybody here almost is a triathlete. We might have, do we have a few swimmer onlys?
I'm not sure how much triathlete is.
2 or 3. So we have a few swimmer onlys, but the majority of you guys are multi-sport. So
You should take that up with your coach.
So I guess without further ado, I'm going to introduce Jason, which I think pretty much everybody knows Jay. And he has a ton of race experience in open water, a lot of ocean experience as well. So we're going to touch on both of those things. And as we kind of go along, I'm sure there'll be opportunities for questions, but definitely at the end. And my only request is that you guys speak loudly when you ask a question so that the camera picks it up. Am I missing anything? Okay, take it away.
Awesome. Well, good morning guys, thanks so much for coming. I think I'm going to start off by asking, who is not swimming in the ocean this year? Don't have any ocean swims planned currently. Okay, so today I'm specifically going to focus on ocean. Everything carries over to open to lake swimming anyway, but certain things like current and chop and stuff is obviously more prevalent in the ocean. Wildlife, animals, ocean animals are obviously not something you got to deal with in lakes and dams, etc. I know a lot of you are racing Panama City Beach, which is in a couple of weeks' time. So I've done the basis of our discussion today is going to be a ocean swim. And I'm going to start off the discussion today with the story. And the story goes back to 2015. And I basically designed a course, and someone like Mike will know this course. It was the old Durban 70.3 course. And effectively what they had was a right-hand entry with a left-hand turn buoy, and then another left-hand turn buoy with an exit on the beach. Now, the difference between this ocean swim and a lot of what you'll see in the States is we had 6 feet breakers coming in. So it was massive waves. You can imagine breakers pretty much this high. We had massive currents that day. We didn't have any jellyfish, which was a good thing. But the current was a major factor. So you've heard the saying, specifically in triathlon, you can't win the race in the swim, but you can definitely lose it. This was one of the scenarios where you could win the race in the swim. So we were basically all lined up here, and the pros were lined up ahead of us, and the elite age groupers. So I was against the line. I was waiting for the pros to start, and I watched one of the pros, young, probably 20-year-old, go and speak to the lifeguards. And I saw him having a chat to the lifeguards. And he then lined up again and the gun went. Hey, Kristen, no problem, jump in. As the gun went, this young guy literally ran, I don't want to exaggerate, but I'm going to say about 250 meters up the beach, while everyone else jumped into the water. Now, the rest of the pros, there's probably a field of about 30 pros, jumped into the water at this point, and by the time they got around the first sight buoy, they were pushed to about that point there. He had spoken to lifeguards and spoken to them about how strong the current currently was. Lifeguards said to him, it's a 250 meter current before you hit the first buoy. So he ran 250 meters up the beach and he hit the water here. And all he did was swim straight out. But by the time he got to the buoy, he had been pushed to that point there. These guys were sitting under the pier trying to swim against the current to come back around the buoy. He won that race by 27 minutes, the whole race. He won the swim, I think, by 30 minutes. I mean, these guys spent 20 minutes swimming against current to get around the buoy. That is preparation and understanding your environment properly. He caught a wave in, he was a surfer, caught a wave in. I think he was on his bike. These guys hadn't even got around the first buoy. So that's open water specific knowledge, and that's what we want to try and teach you is how do we take the 10 factors that you might deal with in open water, understand them, prepare for them, and what to do when we experience them in open water. Okay, so then get rid of all the purple there. Mike, were you at that race?
I was.
We did not win.
Did you end up in the
They can't see this one.
That purple spot was you, huh?
No, actually, I do remember that. And by the time my wave went, everybody saw what was happening.
And it was running down the beach. Yeah, so there were two races, similar story. The one that actually ended up cancelling this one. And there was a whole bunch of us standing on the beach and strong swimmers like me going, because they were talking about cancelling the swim, like, oh, they can't cancel the swim, people need to know how to swim. And we watched 20 pros being rushed under a pier, and you were like, maybe we should cancel the swim. so yeah, the race directors, especially in a place like South Africa at the tough time, they've actually just cancelled the Ironman swim for the 3rd year in a row due to conditions, currents, waves, etc. You're not going to face conditions nearly as tough here in the US, specifically in your coastal swims, but you are going to face the 10 factors that we're going to go through now. Okay, so I'm going to put this to you. What are the conditions that you're going to face in the ocean that you don't have to face when you're swimming in your lap pool in your local master's class?
Jellyfish.
Okay, let's start.
Jellyfish.
Jellyfish. Okay, so wildlife. Let's put wildlife on the somewhere.
There's catfish in the lake.
Snakes.
Don't forget about the snakes.
What?
Oh, no, not in your lake, that you're gonna swim. No,
There's
there's all those.
Do not add any more animals to this one.
Okay, what else?
Wind.
Currents. Put that right up there.
How about other swimmers?
Yep. Competitors.
Wind.
Yep. Wind.
Sun.
Some of us know really well about wind.
With wind comes shock.
Temperature.
Sun. Who mentioned sun? Cool. What else? You say temperature?
Temperature was
Yep.
shouted out.
Yep. Sighting.
Water visibility.
Yep. Visibility.
Are we supposed to be able to see the water?
Did you already put people?
Never seen that.
Yeah. Other competition.
Oh, competition. Oh, okay.
And then there is drafting, which is something that we're going to talk about today. And then there's probably, I'm going to put this in under entry and exit, which is also very important when doing open water. It's not like getting into a pool.
What about not on a wall?
What about?
No walls.
Not having a wall, exactly. Yeah.
Flipper does no good out there.
Yeah. you got a paddle
I
buoy.
still think you need to learn how to do that.
Yeah. Okay, guys. So you can see there's a whole host of things that you're going to deal with in open water that you're not going to be dealing with in the pool, and that's why open water swimming is a very specific skill. The stroke that we teach and everything that we do for open water is completely different to what you want to learn to do in the pool. But that's a whole different discussion. Today we're going to talk about how to get you through that swim in one piece without having, which is the biggest issue for open water swimmers, is open water panic attacks. Okay. Now, we're going to go through what causes open water panic attacks, and we're going to also go through what you're going to do to avoid them in today's discussion. So, a quick question on these things here. Give me examples for those of you that have swum and done races where one of these factors have had a massive effect on your race. Give me an example. You swimming along, let's use another competitor. What has another competitor done to you?
Knocked your goggles off.
Knocked your goggles off, swum over you, kept swimming into you when you're trying to sight for a buoy, or There's a million things that other competitor could do to you. Anyone swimming in really bad currents where you've struggled to actually get to a buoy because you're swimming against the current? There we go. Temperature. Who's done swims in really cold water up north? I've swum in the UK and Europe. The water was ridiculous. It took your breath away. Visibility issues. Who suffers from claustrophobia? I do. I've got major claustrophobia issues. And who has been drafted or who has learned how to draft as an effective? We've taught Karen how to draft. Okay, I'm going to go through that today. That's going to be one of the things hopefully we'll get to practice in the pool if we end up with enough time. Okay, so going through all of these things, I'm going to apply this to my little drawing on the other side there. So that swimmer that I was talking about earlier, he obviously had a very good concept of what the currents were doing because he spoke to the lifeguards. A lot of swims have a pier. The swim that we're going to be doing in Panama City has got a pier. One of the things I've seen triathletes do is literally on the morning they walk out onto the pier and they take a slice of bread or something, they throw it and they watch the slice of bread move. That'll give you a very good indication of surface currents. So if you want to know what the current's doing, walk out onto the pier, throw a piece of bread 20 minutes before you get into the water, 30 minutes before you get into the water, you'll see what those currents are doing. A good race director, and unfortunately it doesn't happen all the time, will change the swim direction based on the ocean current of the day. In Florida Full Ironman, if any of you raced it last year, I raced it, it was horrific. From this point here, so it was the other way around, we were swimming this way. From this point here to that point, I think I normally average 125 in open water per 100. It took me 235 to get from this buoy to this buoy because of the currents. And all the guys had to do was change the direction, and everyone would have had a fantastic swim. So guys that were coming out that were trying to target making cutoff times didn't make cutoff times. They had, what was it, like 35% of the field didn't make it through the swim. And again, that's on the race directors. The race director should be looking at these types of things and changing the direction of the swim. Okay, so let's go back to the entry. Okay, so we now know the current is heading that way. So first thing that we do is exactly what that swimmer did that I described in the beginning. We don't enter the water to fail. We don't enter the water to end up over here. So even if the start's there, you run this way and you start to position over there. And hopefully, if you're swimming like that, you'll be able to make it around the buoy. So always accommodate the current if you can before you get into the water. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. The other thing is, if you do end up going like this, okay, instead of trying to swim there, you're going to keep being pushed here. You've got to rectify at a more direct angle. So if you realize you're now off angle, you're going to have to fight that current to that point there before you can make the buoy. Don't try and swim there. You're never going to make it. You're going to constantly be pushed across, and you're going to be slow because you're constantly being pushed out of your swim pool.
So are there any rules against running up the beach
No.
or away from the entry?
No.
Just help you cross the timing, right?
You've got to get across the timing mat. So once I'm across the timing mat, I'm on the course.
Yeah.
And if I want to run up the beach for 200 meters, I've seen it happen millions of times. No one's ever stopped you. I used to do it because I used to hate the washing machine at the first buoy. So I used to run 200 meters just so that I could sight this section here and avoid this. Because I'd get here really quickly and there'd be like 200 people trying to get around the buoy.
So same thing on the exit. You can exit anywhere but run down the beach to the exit?
So the exit point again, you've got to pass your timing mat. So if the timing mat is sitting there, you've got to come out across the timing mat.
Okay.
And then generally, depending on where the swimmer is, they'll normally have the timing mat somewhere where the beach exit is close. So you want to kind of aim for that.
Okay.
Because it's going to take you time. So what will happen though, and I've seen this happen, if you've got this scenario, you're going to come around this buoy and come in, but you're going to constantly be pushed this way.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is you come out over here.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind, if there's a timing mat here, you need to run across the next to the ocean and then cross your timing mat. You don't want to miss that. Okay.
So basically, as long as you hit both timing mats and go around both buoys, it's free
Absolutely.
game.
I could go around the buoy, I could just sort of stay.
Right, yeah.
The guys are going to stop you. I mean, they're going to try and get you back on
Sure.
the course. But yes, as long as you are not, as long as I haven't swum on the inside of the course, I should be fine.
Okay.
Okay, any questions on current while we're there? Take off 1 point. points here.
When will we know if they have accommodated the current on that swim so that I can decide if I wanna wake up or not?
So
I
generally,
will miss the cutoff if they have.
generally the currents don't change massively from one day to the next. So we'll do our practice on the day before the race. You'll have a very good indication of what the currents are going to be like on your race, because we'll do our practice on the afternoon before your race. And a good coach will take you out there and make sure you're used to the water temperature and the currents or whatever they are. Okay, so that's current. We're going to come back to competition. Wind and chop. Okay, so now in this scenario, we've got an onshore wind, which means the chop is going to be into our face if you're a right-hand breather on your outward leg. So how many of you breathe to one side? Okay. Most open water swimmers breathe to one side, and most coaches will teach open water swimmers breathe to one side because you should be breathing on every stroke. If you look at the top open water triathletes, they breathe on one side. However, you need to be able to breathe on the other side, because if this is serious chop from here to here, you need to be able to switch and breathe on the other side. Doesn't happen a lot. It's happened to me in a couple of World Champs races, actually one in Oklahoma where the chop was probably 1 meter high and you could not breathe, and it was so consistent that you had to breathe on the other side. And again, knowing that that's going to happen and understanding where the wind's coming from and being mentally prepared to go around this buoy and say, from this point to this point, I'm now breathing on the other side, and not swallowing a whole bunch of water for the first 100, 200 meters is a good thing to know. So understand where the wind's going. You can have a look at the chop on the morning. Obviously anything with white, what do they call it, white tails? White caps, you know that the chop's going to be really bad. Okay. So any questions on wind, current, and chop and breathing?
I want to interject for just a second. Basically, what this list is a bag of tricks, right? The more of these tricks that you can experience and have under your belt come race day, you don't have to think so hard, you don't have to work so hard, because you've experienced some of these things. And breathing to the other side, if you've swum with me, you know who you are. I'm constantly trying to get you guys to breathe on that other side, just every so often, so that you have that in your bag of tricks. So that come race day and you've got to switch sides, no big deal. Uncomfortable, maybe, but it's no big deal. And you can switch it and you're good to go. So that's what really all of this is about. So anyway.
Yep. Okay, sun. So depending on where your race is, where the sun's going to be rising, so we're going to be on the east coast. So you're going to have sun into your face on your swim out in the morning. You're going to probably want tinted goggles, but you wouldn't need them if you were on the other side, because you don't need tinted goggles if the sun's behind you. Specifically if you've got a whole lot of buildings, the sun's not going to have a major effect on you. So in Panama, tinted goggles would be a good thing. It'll help you with sighting. There's nothing worse than sun bouncing off the water early in the morning. So tinted goggles for the sun. That brings us into sighting. So sighting is a very specific technique that you should be practicing as an open water swimmer when you're swimming in the pool. We do drills where we put a bottle or a can at the end of the pool, and I get the guys halfway through the pool to do a proper sight. Now, we'll maybe do some demonstration of this in the pool later if we get a chance, but a proper sight should actually not affect your stroke at all. It should be a mid-stroke, head up, half look while you're swimming. So it should literally not slow you down at all. You watch guys that are in open water that are specifically trying to sight outside of their stroke, it can cost you 10 to 15 seconds per 100 if you're sighting consistently. Okay, so sighting is something you should be practicing. You need to learn a technique on how to sight, on which arm you should be sighting. If you breathe on the right arm, you should be sighting on your left arm, because your power comes through. I'm in the glide, and I'll basically take a look while I'm in the glide, and then follow through with my stroke. We'll demonstrate that in the pool. Something you need to practice. Yeah.
It might be elementary, but like talking about the color of the buoys and when you're turning and different things like that.
Yeah.
So.
And most of that is race specific, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they're typically either orange or red,
Yeah, red,
for
red
the
means
turns.
turn.
Yeah. My experience, and please chime in, but there's sighting buoys to keep you on track, and then there's turn buoys, and the turn buoys are going to be very different than the sighting buoys typically, right?
Generally, unmanned rules, sighting buoys, you don't have to go around sighting buoys, they're purely there for sighting. Good race directors, again, will have more sighting buoys than less, because that makes your life easier and it keeps you straight. Yes.
So how often are you sighting
I was just showing you.
So
So,
how often, and are you really just sighting with a red one? Are you choosing one thing on the way out, one thing on the turn, one thing on the way back? Or are you constantly adjusting?
the short answer to sighting is you sight as often as you swim straight, and how difficult the water is.
You guys know my wise ones, I'm like.
Yeah. So I know a lot of guys who struggle to stay on course, and a lot of guys will only need to sight every 10 strokes. And again, if you're in a lake, you can sight every 10 strokes comfortably because you don't have current. But in this scenario, I would be sighting every 4 to 5 strokes just to make sure that I'm on track and I'm not being pushed off of my line.
Yeah. And think of your sighting as a peak. You're peaking at the buoy. You're peaking at where your destination is,
Yeah.
what your target is. It is, a lot of folks have the tendency to take your sight as a breath, and you don't need to. That changes your body position, it changes your stroke. This is a lot of geographic area that you have to lift up and get out of the water, and that takes a lot of effort. So you just want to peak. You want to peak at it. So.
Yeah, so I'm going to teach, there's a couple of things on the sighting that you can you can save yourself from sighting. So if you start in a really fast bunch, I mean, I do this a lot. I know if I'm starting in, say, an Ironman sub 1 hour bunch, I know that there's a lot of really good swimmers in there, and I'll often not sight much. I will get on someone's feet, we're going to talk about drafting now, and I will back the fact that the dude in front of me knows what he's doing, because he can take the energy to sight. That's a whole different ballgame than when you're at the back of the field, because if you actually track the back of the field swimmers, for the cameras, you to add to my answer, if you've got a swimmer in front of you that you trust, you don't have to sight as much. It's the same as cyclists, you guys all, I know if I'm in the draft and I've got someone who knows what they're doing, I don't have to worry about my brakes, I can be a matchbox behind their wheels and I can sit there drafting. If I've got someone in front of me that I don't know and I don't trust, I'm not a matchbox, I'm a good meter behind them because they could do something stupid. So if you've got someone in front of you know, or you're in a group that you're comfortable with, you can sit on people's feet and let them do the work. If you watch the professionals, the only guy sighting is the guy in the front. There's no one else sighting. The pro dude in the front is doing all the sighting, the other guys are right on his feet, and we're going to talk about drafting now as well. Okay. Okay, so that's sighting. We'll give you some demonstration of that when we get into the pool a bit later.
We have a buoy set up for you. So.
Awesome. Temperature. Okay, so temperature is a big thing for specifically triathletes because it makes the decision on whether or not you're going to get to wear wetsuits or not, and the wetsuit is a whole other environmental factor that we've got to deal with. So cold water swimming specifically has some serious negative effects to us as triathletes, and we're going to go through that. That's my final point, open water panic attacks. But temperature is something that you need to accommodate in your races, and specifically the temperature is going to be cold. So as much as a lot of triathletes go, I want the water colder because that means I get to wear my wetsuit, the colder water actually creates a lot more issues for you and problems than swimming without your wetsuit in warmer water. Okay. So wetsuits, any questions specifically about wetsuits? Because I know a lot of my guys have a lot of questions around wetsuits. Swimming in wetsuits, breathing in wetsuits, putting wetsuits on, anything like that.
I want to know about cutting my wetsuit.
That's a professional trick. They cut their wetsuit at the bottom, makes it easy to get off.
What was the question?
Cutting the legs off your wetsuit. So you don't cut it all the way down, you cut it halfway down the calf. It just makes it a lot easier and quicker to get off. You lose a little bit of buoyancy in your legs, with minuscule amount of buoyancy, but it does make it easier to get off. If you look at the ITU pros that need to do a quick transition, they cut their legs. Okay. Yeah.
So I didn't know this, and somebody helpful on one of your chats posted that even if it's not a wetsuit temperature, if you're not trying to get to Kona, you just put your wetsuit on.
Yeah. So there's an upside and a downside to that. I was actually chatting to David about that this week. So Ironman very cleverly has now allowed, it's a new thing, it's only been about 2 years. If it's a non-wetsuit legal race, you can wear your wetsuit, but then you start in what they call a wetsuit bunch, which is right at the end of the field. Now the downside to that, there's a lot of downsides to starting at the end of the field. One is an increase in temperature and an increase in wind on the bike. So your wind, we're racing Ironman Texas next weekend. If you look at the bike So if someone's not in that wetsuit group, they're going to get onto the bike an hour and a half to 2 hours after me, which means they're going to be dealing with 22 mile an hour winds, where the most I'm going to have to deal with is 16 to 17 mile an hour winds. So there's a lot of other factors to take into play. The other thing I've seen is they run out of nutrition and hydration on the run course for the guys that are coming through the back. So it's something that you have to weigh up, and I'll weigh that up with all my athletes on an individual basis. Okay. Okay. So guys, 5 questions. So today, as I said, today the main thing is we want to get through the theory. We're going to be hosting another one of these in the next couple of weeks. And if it means we spend the majority of our time in the classroom today and more time in the pool next time, that's fine. I want to get as much knowledge into your heads today and not rush the pool stuff. We can get to the pool. Okay. So any questions you got, throw them my way. Now's the time.
I got a question about wetsuits. So this is a new thing for me, is swimming in a wetsuit.
Wetsuits.
So care of it after I swim, I know to wash it and whatever. But is there anything that I put on it so that it's easy to get on for the next time I use it?
So the best thing to do with wetsuit, put it on a hanger,
Yeah.
put it in the shower, under the shower, and just let the
Hose it off.
fresh water run through it.
And
Especially chlorine will destroy your wetsuit quickly. Okay.
You talk about chafing, like in
Yep.
on the neck and stuff like that, and that's pretty cool.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so
Spraying after total
That's worse than a hickey.
It was
Okay.
way worse.
Do you put anything in your wetsuit to help get it off?
yeah, quickly I'm going to go through the chafing question. So
Oh, okay.
the chafing with the wetsuit is, there's 2 issues with chafing. One is, and generally the biggest problem with chafing is it hasn't been put on properly. If any part of that Velcro is exposed, any part, like a tiny little inch, you will get that rash burn on your neck. So the most important thing is when you're putting your wetsuit on is to have someone behind you who knows what they're doing to make sure that that Velcro is covered. That'll reduce 90% of what Zach was talking about. Then obviously you can use various things. They say don't use Vaseline because apparently it destroys your wetsuit. I've been using Vaseline for 20 years over anything else. It's the best thing, it's the cheapest thing, and it works the best. I take a small tub down to the race with me and I just schlack that stuff everywhere.
What's it called?
Vaseline.
Oh.
It's the accent.
It's the accent.
So you get body glide, you get all these fancy things. I've just been using Vaseline. That's never done anything to my wetsuits. So the other trick with, and while we're talking about wetsuits, is take the Vaseline, put it on your forearms, both forearms, and your legs, and it just slips off afterwards. You don't have to struggle with it. And while we're talking about wetsuit as well, remember, especially if you're doing a long open water swim, your watch is going to sit outside your wetsuit. Okay, so you have 2 options before you try to take your wetsuit off. You pull it over your watch, then rip it off, or you take your watch off, put it in your teeth, which is what I do, because once you get that wetsuit stuck in that watch, you're sitting there for 20 minutes to get your wetsuit out of there.
Oh.
And I know I've done it. Once it's stuck in there, you actually need help. It's a nightmare. Okay, so always be careful of your watch.
So you're talking about sleeves versus, what about sleeves versus no sleeves?
Okay, so sleeve, now I'm talking specifically about the sleeve
yeah,
wetsuit. So I spent the first 5 years of my triathlon career in a sleeveless wetsuit. I swam in the UK in sleeveless wetsuits. I love sleeveless wetsuits. In the colder water, you do need sleeves. Sleeveless wetsuits are awesome. They do 90% of the job of a sleeved wetsuit, and they're just so much easier in so many ways.
Do we
I
need
love them.
sleeves for Panama City?
No, you don't. Okay.
But wait, we're afraid
Yeah,
of
wait, there's more.
Yeah, I thought the sleeves and the minimum were specifically for the bike.
Jellyfish.
We're gonna get to sea life now. Okay, wildlife. What are the? Let me do the wildlife this way. What are people's fears? And we're talking specifically about ocean now. What are the fears about wildlife?
Sharks.
Okay. So I will put everybody's mind at rest. In the history of triathlon, and with the fact that there is a race happening pretty much every single weekend in oceans all over the world, from Australia to South Africa, with great white populations within a couple of 100 meters of these races, there has never been a shark attack in a triathlon. Ever. There's been a couple of ghosts and a couple of close calls, but there's never been a shark attack.
That's not
Should have left that out.
You guys think they're gonna get the kayakers and paddleboarders before they're
They're not gonna come in that close
Just
to
don't
the
use the
seals.
I know.
Okay. You don't gotta be fast.
Sharks in my mind, and I don't like sharks, I've done for many years, sharks in my mind are a non-issue for triathletes, knock on wood. They've never had an issue. And by now, if a shark was confident enough to swim towards 2,000 of these noisy creatures, then they would have done it by now. So sharks are not an issue, but there are other issues. And in Panama, jellyfish are going to be an issue.
I'm so worried about it, like, just going in my face, you know what I mean?
Worse in your mouth.
Okay, so Panama last year.
I could just see sucking them down my throat.
Panama last year had jellyfish and they had blue bottles, and there were a lot of stings. I got stung once in the face. It lasted for a couple of seconds and went away. It's not as bad as you think. Jellyfish, you're probably going to get stung at some point. If you do triathlon, you're going to get stung. The reality is it's nice having sleeve wetsuits because it's either your face or your hands. I got hit on the face, but it stings for about 30 seconds, and that's it.
It's kind of like a rubber band pop, right?
Exactly, and I didn't even think about it again. So jellyfish, don't have to worry about jellyfish, seriously. I mean, if you swam into a manhole or something, that could be a problem. Nobody could see that before.
So if sleeveless feels better and more comfortable, then that's a better way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't worry about ocean life. Seriously, ocean life is a non-issue for us. Actually, going to my next thing, entries and exits. The biggest risk you actually have as far as massive injuries, entries and exits. Things like, not so much in the ocean, especially if you've got a beach ocean, but lake swims. The biggest injuries I've ever seen are guys running into a lake and standing on a bottle, a broken bottle, and cutting their foot like this, or breaking their ankle on a rock on their way out. So the biggest, for me, jellyfish and stuff in the ocean where you've got nice beaches is not an issue. It's the entries and exits in lake swims.
And if anyone's concerned about ours, we'll have carpeting all the way in.
Yeah.
So I know that was a bit of a challenge last year. We thought we had plenty, but we ran a bit short. So
Yeah.
we've got that taken care of. So it'll be a nice, easy entry and exit for you this year.
So one of the things, so I'm going to deal with entries first. And since we're doing the ocean, you guys don't have big waves, but I'll discuss the wave scenario. So if you're on a beach, you're running in, you run into a point where you're halfway between your knees and your hips, and at that point you can dive in, and you do what's called a dolphin. You dive, you take one step, you stand again, you dive again until you're in deeper water, and then you start swimming. It's a very simple technique and scenario. Don't dive too shallow, and don't keep running until you're up to here. Just keep going in. We will discuss the open water panic attacks as part of that now, which is more prevalent in lakes and not oceans anyway. Then exit. Exit is very simple. You swim until your fingers touch something. So you don't try and stand until you're swimming. And you'll know in the ocean, the good thing about an ocean is the visibility is generally a lot better than being in a lake. So you will swim until your fingers touch the sand. As soon as your fingers touch the sand, grab a handful of sand, pull yourself up, stand up, and then run out of the ocean. Don't try to stand up until you touch sand. Okay. Any questions about entries and exits? Lakes and ocean.
You want to talk about like a staggered start? I mean, I think people have seen the huge, massive start. But
Yeah.
So maybe he's.
Yeah, so Ironman, we're going to talk about this now. Ironman in their wisdom decided, I think it was about 5 years ago, to stop the mass starts. So my school, when I started this, the mass start was 2,500 people hitting the ocean at one go. And it was pretty insane. You would get to this turn buoy here in this Ironman South Africa, and you would have 500 guys trying to make that buoy. It was nuts. You could get pushed underwater and be held under for over a minute with guards over your head. It was an insane scenario. And that, plus what we're going to talk about with open water panic attacks, led to the deaths of 2 triathletes at one race in South Africa, in East London, where 2 guys had a heart attack in the water, literally minutes apart from each other. Mike was at that race, I was at that race. I saw the guys being paddled out, and both of them died. So on the back of that, Ironman decided that they were going to stagger the starts. They were going to put people in waves that they were comfortable in, and they were going to start them off at 10 at a time. So for those of you that haven't done an Ironman race yet, it's a buzzer system. You stand in what it looks like cattle lines, and they go beep, and 10 people go in. And they wait 5 seconds, they go beep, 10 people go in again. So when you hit the water, it's you and 10 people, not you and 2,500 people. Okay, so that has had a massive effect on open water panic attacks specifically, and also on the scenario that we're talking about, which is getting to that first buoy.
And it's all based on your swimming pace that you use.
Yes. you're gonna have, so I've actually drawn it here. So you're gonna have guys marking it off here, and let's say this is a 70.3, you're gonna have a sub 30-minute bunch, you're gonna have a 35-minute bunch, 40-minute bunch, 45-minute bunch, all the way back, and you'll stay your start based on where you want to.
You just go where you want to.
Yeah.
So two things, one, everybody lies
Yes.
about how fast they can swim.
Yes, yeah.
And so, if you, my learning this last season was put yourself in at least one group faster than you think you swim, because everybody else around you is lying.
So I'm gonna support them here. So as a coach, and it's something that I've done for 15 years, go one group ahead. And that's got nothing to do with the fact that you're lying. It's got to do with the fact that if you're gonna do everything else I'm gonna tell you to do, you're gonna be faster than you think. Specifically if you're drafting and you're swimming around swimmers that are slightly faster than you. You wanna be in a scenario where people are pulling you, not when you're trying to have to swim around them. Okay? So always go one step. So I swim 29-ish minutes for a 70.3. If they had a 25 group, which they don't have, I would take that group. Because I'd be on the back of that group, but I'd rather be on the back of that group than trying to be on at the head of the 35 group or something. Okay.
The other thing that happened to me in a lake swim, it was the Joplin summer roundup, was I swam because the exit and entry were so close to one another. I swam back to the entry. They're like, no, no. And so I lost time because they weren't, in my opinion, very clearly marked.
Yeah.
So I lost time because I swam back to the entry, not to the exit. So that was just a watch out, like, oh, I need to know that.
Absolutely. And race directors, the biggest fear for race directors is swimming, specifically open water swimming. Scott's got it a bit easy in the pool. He can't lose these guys up and down the lanes. But open water swimming, ocean swimming, race directors, this is their panic stage. They have a big sigh of relief once they've accounted for everyone coming out of the water. And the bigger the buoys they give, the online, it starts with the online information, the course information, the race briefing is important, all of those types of things. And as a new athlete, you've got to go and absorb as much information as you can in the race. Use your coaches if they're what's the word? They're not as adverse as me, and just plug in as much information as you can from them. But the biggest thing is to get out to races and orientate yourself with the swim as much as you can before you actually start. Arriving 10 minutes before the swim and rushing down to the start is going to create a whole lot of panic for you and add to the probability of those things happening, where you end up going the wrong way, etc., etc. Yep.
I don't know how Panama City is, but I did Malibu a few years back and was totally untrained for dealing with the waves.
Yeah, I'm gonna-
For major waves to get through before swimming started.
Cool. I'll show you how to
Can
do
you
that.
talk about just how you enter and manage waves?
Yeah. So rollers are so the waves are two points. There's either a white roller or there is a swell. Okay, a white roller, if you're on a beach sand, so I'm not talking about a rocky ocean start, but if you're on the beach, it's very simple to deal with. You swim to the roller until the roller is within about 1.5 meters of your head. At that point, you duck dive like you were on a surfboard. If you're shallow enough, you grab the sand with both hands, you hold the sand. That means it's not going to push you back. Hold the sand, wait for the wave to come over your head, push yourself off the sand up again, carry on swimming. Next roller comes, go down. If you get to a point where you're too deep to grab the sand, you do a normal duck dive like a surfer, you go under the water. While you're under the water, instead of holding the sand, you do breaststroke so that the wave's not pushing you back the whole way. As soon as the wave's over your head, you pop up again. With the swells, you don't need to do that if it's a swell. So if it hasn't broken yet, you just swim straight up the swell, straight up the swell. You don't need to try and go under it. As soon as you see white water, you know you've got to go under it. If you try to swim into white water, you're going to end 40 meters back.
That's
Okay.
right. 3 times.
So people that grew up in South Africa, we dealt with massive waves as kids, so we learned how to do that when we were kids, and most of us surf, so we know how to duck down the surfboard. So it's the exact same principle as a surfer. So if you want to learn how to do it, go and watch a surfer, go on YouTube, surfer, duck dive a wave, watch what they do, and they do it with board, which is even harder. And then you'll also, I can maybe send out on the email list, I'll send out some links on how to do the sand grab, because that's the best way to get through the sand. And it's not that you have to do it. I mean, some of the breakers we dealt with were massive. If you didn't know how to do that, you wouldn't even get past the breakers. You'd end up back on the beach.
Yeah. One thing I've noticed on a couple of longer distance
temperature primarily, and it's the position you keep your feet in. So basically what happens, especially if you're doing a long, like an Ironman event, you go into water, the water's cold, and you do that with your foot. And now you leave your foot at that position in cold water. So the muscles itself, they're kind of all contracted. And then as you're about to get out the water, you basically do that and you pull on the muscle again. So as you're about to get out the water, you start cramping. A lot of people will take salt before they get into the water, putting electrolytes in to try and avoid that. But the best thing you can do is, and I try to do it when I'm turning a buoy, is I actually just stretch my calf out. So I'll take the buoy when I'm not using my legs at all, I'll stretch my calves out a bit, and that'll avoid you having the cramps. It's cold water and just the position of your foot. Because it's in a ballerina, unnatural position for over an hour. So if you just basically stretch your calf out every now and then, you should be able to avoid that.
Well, you don't kick, right?
Sorry?
No kicking.
Yeah, what you mean kick? We're not going to go into stroke. We're not going to go into open water stroke today, but that's a whole different discussion. We can have a clinic for that because open water swimming is a very specific skill. But speak to your coaches about 2-beat kicking, single side, shorter arms, higher elbows, how to adjust your stroke for chop, for current. There's a whole. So basically, an open water swimmer is like a 4x4. You need a whole lot of different gears and stuff to be able to do stuff. It's not the pool. The pool is a drag racer. You've got one gear, it's flat out, and it's fast. Open water swimmers, you need a whole lot of different tricks in your tool bag.
So I get kind of dizzy when I've been horizontal and then I stand up and people will be like, well, you weren't running out of the, I'm like, well, I probably would have fallen over, you know? Is that normal?
It's very normal. Everyone experiences that. I mean, you can still tumble to it. I've got vertigo so bad now I can't even tumble to it anymore. So when I stand up at the end of the swim, I can't stand and run. I need to walk for 5 or 6, otherwise I'll be like those guys that do that and I'll run off and fall over. So yeah, I definitely walk a little bit. You do. It's a what do they call it? Basically back to that vasodilation. It's just the blood running out of your head.
Yeah, but isn't it also just like breathing and then pushing it air out as you are in the water?
It's
You're holding your breath.
It's got that, we're going to talk about that now, the shallow breathing, but it's got more to do with that you've been in a position like this under strain because your heart's been pushing, so you've got high blood flow, high heart rate, and you stand up and the blood just drops out of your head and you feel a little bit dizzy. So that's exactly what's happening there.
Then you go run 90 k's.
And you run on K's and run, do your run. Okay, so I want to get to something that's very important, and one of the cruxes of today's discussion, because I know so many people struggle with this, and I'm going to tell you a story about me with this. So somebody who played college water polo, Premier League water polo, is a surfer, comfortable in the water. Like, I'm comfortable. I can swim 50 yards under the water, no problem. I went through a period where I was having severe open water panic attacks. And it was horrible. I would train for a race, I would go to like national champs, and I was trying to qualify for a national team, and I'd be 200 yards in, and I literally start to get dizzy, I start to feel like I'm going to vomit, I can't breathe, I roll over onto my back. I had races where I took my wetsuit off mid-water and threw it to a paddleboarder to say, yeah, take my wetsuit, I can't breathe. And I've done races where I've had to swim breaststroke the whole race because I'm having a full-on panic attack. Anyway, that was about 10 years ago, and I went into a serious study on what causes this. I got together with a whole lot of professional coaches, triathletes, and this is a major issue in open water. For those of you who's experienced an open water panic attack, okay, there's a couple of you. Now I'll tell you, for those that haven't, you will at some point. I've spoken to pros. There's very few pros I've spoken to that haven't had it happen to them at some point, and it can be the most simple trigger. And it's all about genetics. We are genetically programmed not to be in water. And there's a deep genetic coding there that if something happens, we go into an anti-drown mode. And knowing what to do or how to deal with it when it happens is very important, especially if you're half a mile out to the ocean, into the ocean. Now, what would happen with me is, the biggest trigger would be someone swimming over me. So I'd be in a tight pack or a bunch, and I'd have an elbow in the head, and the next thing I'd slow down and someone would go over me, and I'm now underwater and I feel like I can't breathe. But there's a whole host of factors that have led up to the point where I have a full-on open water panic attack. And I haven't had one now for, 8 years. And I go through a process of trying to eliminate these factors before I even start the race. Okay, so what happened? What is open water panic attacks, first of all? So, first thing with open water panic attacks, they happen in the first 300 yards. If you can get through the first 300 yards, the likelihood of you having an open water panic attack is virtually zero. You've got to get through those first 300 yards. Okay, so you're now standing on the beach. Bob's on the beach, and he's ready to go. He's got his wetsuit on, so he's hot, he's heated up. His heart rate's going through the roof because now he's excited, the anxiety's going, he's about to start a race. He's stressed, he's anxious, and he's got vasodilation. So what that is basically all his blood vessels are now widening up because he's hot, and his heart's pumping, and there's all these physiological factors that are happening in his body. Gun goes, heart rate spikes, runs down the beach, heart rate spikes even more, hits the water, the water's cold. So the first thing that happens, he goes from vasodilation to vasoconstriction. So now all of a sudden those blood vessels tighten up, heart rate's going up, okay? He's in dark water, and all human beings have a claustrophobic effect when you put a pillow on our face, and you've hit dark water now and you can't breathe. So now my heart rate's pumping high, I can't get the blood around my body, and I feel like someone's put a pillow on my face because I can't see. You then start doing something called shallow breathing. And this is the trick. This is the point where you can stop the panic attack happening. Shallow breathing is when I take in a breath of air and I don't let air out. And we genetically programmed in that scenario to not let air out because we don't want to drown. So what happens is we take our breath, and now we're panicking. I don't let my air out. And I try to take another breath, and eventually I become hypoxic. And what that means is I'm running out of oxygen. And that adds to this entire scenario. I now start to panic because I cannot breathe, I have no oxygen, I'm starting to feel faint, I'm in water, and then somebody that swims over my head. That's all over. Now you literally swim up to the first paddle water and say, I'm dying, get me out of the water. And if you watch any open water race, and specifically in lakes, because it happens far more in lakes because of the darker water, you will see 30 to 40 people get pulled out by paddleboards at the beginning of the event. And this is effectively what's happening. It's a horrible experience. Does anyone want to share one of their experiences with it?
I will.
Yep.
Yeah, it was in Chattanooga, so 70.3, and we were jumping off, they were going by twos, and you jump off the dock, and so the 300 yards thing, and I was with a buddy, and we were, going together. He was nervous as he could be, like he was like dying about jumping into this water, and I was calm, and I thought everything was great. We jump in, and it was almost immediately within, 20 yards, I couldn't breathe, and I couldn't get a breath, and it was, like you said, you had to swim upstream a little bit at Chattanooga, like 100 yards or 150 yards, and then you do a turn, and I couldn't even hardly get to there, and then there was all these people, and I couldn't ever get a breath, and I was completely my head out, and I couldn't ever feel like I just kept feeling like
the wetsuit's putting pressure on your chest.
Putting pressure on me, and I probably hadn't practiced in the wetsuit enough, but I was completely not nervous going in. And it just, it happened almost immediately. The cool water, it was cool, and it was just, and I could barely get to that first kayaker, and then stopped, and then by that time I had a bloody nose and everything. I just, like, my blood pressure had exploded, and
you literally feel like, it's horrible. You feel like you died.
Over in 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's horrible. Anyone else? Yeah.
I never had an answer, but is there any way you can mitigate it?
I'm gonna go through the plan now. So there's ways.
It's not just telling horror stories.
Can you make this not happen? Yes. I'm not telling anybody, give up open water swimming. Okay. Okay, welcome. So how do we mitigate this happening? Okay. So the mitigation actually starts long before you even get to the race. One of the mitigation factors is get used to your wetsuit. I see so many people that take up open water swimming or triathlon, they buy a wetsuit a week out from a race, 2 weeks on, they put it on the beach and they think they're good to go now. Wetsuit is a completely different, it's a different animal. You've got to get used to swimming it. My guys that I coach know I put them in their wetsuit in the pool often, just so that they can get used to that feeling on their chest. Okay, that's the first thing. The other thing is understanding the environment that you're dealing with. A lot of the environment itself will cause a lot of these scenarios. So, first thing we do, in a scenario where you're allowed to get into the water, and I know that a lot of the Ironman races don't allow you in the water before the race, which I think is dumb. They should allow you at every single race, because that is the number one way to avoid having a panic attack. So, in this scenario, I know that Panama does allow you in the water. The Panama race actually this way around. But they've got a practice swim area here. Now what I say to people is get into your wetsuit, get in the water and spend 20 minutes in there. I know it sounds like a long time. You get into the water, you mitigate all of these factors by sitting in the water with your wetsuit. Swim a couple of hard lengths, stop, let the water into your wetsuit, let your body feel the cold water, and at the very, very last minute, when they're pulling people out of the water to come line up, you get up to go line up. Last minute. The longer you can stay in the water and get used to this environment before you're in this environment, the less likely you will have a panic attack. Okay. Now, there are scenarios where they're not going to let you into the water, where they're going to say, sorry, you're going to have to do, they call it a dry land warm up. Now, in that scenario, there's things you can do as well. Number one, do not put the top part of your wetsuit on until you are 2 minutes from the start. You see these guys, they line up over here, and they've got like 30 minutes to wait to the start of their race, and they've got their wetsuit on. That's insane. Like, your heart rate's going to be up, your body temperature's going to be up. So as soon as you get to the point where you know I'm now 4 to 5 minutes away, it doesn't take long. Put your wetsuit on, zip it up, make sure that whoever you're racing with checks you out and you've done your wetsuit properly. That'll avoid a lot of these things, putting your wetsuit on late. The second thing you do is if you've got a dry start, as soon as you hit the water, the first 100 meters is where you're going to make the decision where it's going to happen. Just go slow. Like the first 100 meters, just get used to the water, practice your breathing, calm down, focus on everything that you know that you can do, and part of that is to get out of anyone swimming over you. So, I'll do it again. So you've got, let's call it 3 points for the first buoy, and it's all about that first buoy. If you are a comfortable, confident swimmer that has never had a panic attack and you hit in the water sub 30 minutes, you aim for point 1. If you are a little bit less confident, that you're not worried about panic attacks, but you don't like people swimming over you, you aim for point 2. If you are accustomed to having panic attacks and you want to avoid anyone around you, for me, people swimming over me irritates me and it does cause anxiety, you aim for point 3. So what that might mean is when you start to swim, you're not swimming directly to the buoy, you're swimming at an angle to get up to point 3. This little bit of extra that you're going to go around the buoy, we're talking 25, 30 seconds, maximum.
What's the distance between? Roughly?
Between
I would say
spots. From the buoy
Like
to
10
there,
feet?
we're looking at 10 meters.
Okay.
10 meters. Just to give yourself enough time. You don't want to get to this turn buoy if you're subject to panic attacks and have 20 people trying to round that buoy at the same time. It's not fun.
This is still the case if there's just 10 starting.
Still the case, because remember there's 10 ahead of you, 10 behind you. Depending on your speed, you can still hit that buoy with 30 people trying to turn it. Okay, so it's still the case, and it's going to cost you. This point will cost you 10 seconds. This point will cost you 25 seconds, but it'll take away a lot of stress. Okay, and you can also gauge it as you're going. So I breathe to the right. So in this scenario, it would be a little bit more difficult because I'm looking this way. But if you were going the other way and I was breathing to the right, I'd be able to gauge how many people are on the right-hand side of me to see how close I'm going to take the buoy. So also gauge, like look around you and be aware of what's going on around you in the water, which a lot of open water swimmers don't do. We'll talk about drafting and things like that now. So start off slowly. If you're starting to feel panic, close your eyes. It has a calming or meditative effect, and practice doing that in the pool every now and then. When you're swimming, just close your eyes for a couple of strokes. If you get into that water and you can't see your hand in front of your face and you become claustrophobic, the best thing you can do is just close your eyes. And every time you breathe, open your eyes. So you basically swimming and close your eyes. As I take a breath, I look and I close my eyes again. Do that for 100, 200 yards until you feel like the anxiety is going away, and then you can open your eyes again. Another very cool trick that a pro actually taught me is watch your hand. So when your hand goes in, you should be able to see your hand. And to calm yourself, because if you're looking down into the dark despair, just look at your hand for a second. And if you can see your hand, we'll make some bubbles. And just every time your hand goes in, just focus on your hand. Don't look down into the blackness. It'll help with that claustrophobic feeling. Okay. Any other questions about open water panic attacks?
What about the temperature piece? Because I know, even for myself, and I know somebody specifically out here that the cold is the biggest.
That's why if you can get in the water.
So we're lake swimming right now, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. for those that aren't aware. the water temperature is, 54 degrees, 55 degrees. And so at the start of that, I'm assuming your recommendation is to get in, sit there, let the water in your suit, get used to it, swim 50 yards, and
Slowly.
then stop and do it again, and make sure that breathing stays in line with how it should be, right?
You want your water, your body temperature adaptation to not be too dissimilar to your heart rate increasing. So you don't want your body shock because of cold water and heart rate going up at the same time. So you want to get in slowly, you want to calm yourself down, get the water in, get your body used to that temperature before you start to spike your heart rate. And that's the reason why we say always get into the water.
Yeah.
Get into the water beforehand, spend as long as you can in the water, so that when you come out and you're standing here, I've spent 20 minutes in cold water, and I come standing here for 5 minutes, I've probably taken 4 of those factors out of the equation. Because I'm cold now, not hot.
Yeah, I'm one here, like, it probably is that spend more time before you start, but
Yep.
for me, it's like, it's literally so hard to get air out into the water, like, it's like, you're trying to blow air out, it's like,
Not
Yeah.
happening.
not happening.
And again, a lot of it is, I know it's a bit contrived to say it's in your head, but it is in your head.
Agreed.
And it's a case of trying to calm your mind down and focus on emptying that air out, and just focusing on little things like your hand, or just bubbles, the sound of the bubbles coming out of your mouth, etc. is important. Yep. Liam knows.
What
No
about
bubbles. Sorry.
What about goggles? Like, you go with open water goggles to help.
So goggles for me is a very specific thing. I often swim open water without goggles. Not ocean with salt, but I'll swim like an open water race. The guys that know me, when I swim, Ozark Valley, that water is clear, and I don't like wearing goggles in lakes. I prefer not to have goggles, so I don't wear them at all. But in the ocean, obviously it's going to burn your eyes, so you're going to wear goggles. As far as what goggles you use, they've just got to fit and they mustn't leak. That's the most important thing. If a pair of goggles, the best way to try on a pair of goggles is go to the shop, stick them on, suck them in, and don't put the head on. If you can walk around the shop with them sucked in your eyeballs, they fit. If they fall out, then go and find another pair that's stuck into your eyeballs. Okay.
Jay,
Yeah.
so what about now you're having a panic attack? What do you do?
Okay, so if you get to the
We didn't pay attention and do all the things you just told us. Now
Okay, so
we're
you're having a panic attack. You roll over onto your back, you swim out of the race. So let's say you're having a panic attack over here. Don't roll over into the back and stay there, because people can come swim over you. You go either there or you go there, depending on the current. Don't go there if the current's going this way. Swim out of the way of anyone else. Roll over onto your back and just float. In a wetsuit, you can float on your back. Calm down, focus on your breathing, take a full 2 minutes. It's going to take that long to get out of a panic attack. If you like it, it might even take longer. Okay, so that's one option. The other option you have, which actually works quite nicely, you're going to have paddle boarders along the way. If it's happening, swim up to a paddle boarder, get them to unzip your wetsuit. Okay, that relief of your wetsuit being unzipped, literally, for me, it's the biggest thing. I just feel like I can breathe now. My wetsuit's unzipped. Get them to unzip it. Stay there with them. As long as you're not moving forward on that paddleboard, you cannot be DQ'd.
I was going to say, like,
Yeah.
what is the...
So tell them, just say to them, listen, I'm still in the race, don't move forward. They can even let you get on the board, as long as they're not moving. So you hang on the board, get them, like prop yourself over the board, get them to unzip you, wait there for a while, sit on the board. As soon as you're out of the water, it's amazing, you have a different perspective of life. Like everything calms down and you got these people swimming past and it just doesn't seem so scary. Spend 2 minutes there, get them to zip you back up, get back in the water, just go slowly. You probably won't have it happen again if you've calmed yourself down enough and you get back in the water. Because all of these, well, you're going to still have stress and anxiety, but you're not hot anymore. You're cooler because you've been in the water, so you don't have the vasodilation issue happening. So calm yourself down until you feel comfortable, get back into the water. Okay. You don't want that to happen because it's very difficult. Some people just can't recover from that. It's race over. Like they have to get pulled out of the water. And people have had that happen to them.
I pulled over, I did my first ever sprint, I didn't really train or anything, I was, this is awesome, it's an hour and a half workout. Now, I raced out there, and I did end up like crawling over me and just totally freaked out. And I did hang on to someone's kayak for a little bit and calm down, and I ended up being able to finish it, but it was more because I was like, well, I have to finish it. But I didn't panic as much after that, and I just
there's a question over here.
Yeah.
Just, when do they decide to pull you out? I mean, what's?
It's your decision, it's not theirs.
So they don't decide?
Yeah, you gotta tell
Unless you
them.
pass out, then it's their decision.
Yeah, you say to them, I'm out, and then they'll take you back. But they will specifically ask you,
They ask me.
are you pulling yourself out of the race? And once you've told them that you're out, they'll take your chip away from you.
So, mine's kind of relative to that. I mean, is there somebody at the exit that's going, you took too long, you're out, or can you just, what happened?
There is a very horrible job for somebody that's.
I was wondering, how many of it works?
And if you do not make that swim exit time, they will say sorry and get you
Because
out.
I think that part of my anxiety, even right now, makes me is
This is supposed to be a positive experience.
We're adding to your bag of tricks, Chrissy, you're gonna be fine.
on the way
I was just hoping, I was just hoping they said, oh, good for you, keep on going, the finish line won't be there, but go ahead. Okay, so that's important, because they will take you off.
Yeah.
They'll take you out.
Oh, they don't even let you finish?
So what do you do? You're done.
Say you're done.
I wanna add to some of that.
Okay.
Yeah, so who here has ever done visualization? Okay, I'm very disappointed. We're gonna take a 30-second visualization. So obviously you're not gonna visualize your entire race because that'll take you, the better part of half a day. Visualize these parts, right? So visualize your entry point. Visualize yourself getting to these siding buoys. Visualize yourself making the turn, the next turn, the exit. And basically what you wanna do, relax space, you wanna lay down. In your bed is fine, but that might be a little too relaxed. I like to do it on the floor. And you literally lay there and you wanna take a minute to kind of prep your body for it. You wanna tighten everything, and then you wanna relax everything. You wanna do that 2 or 3 times. You're gonna close your eyes and you're gonna see yourself in this mass of people. You're gonna see yourself getting into the water with 9 of your closest friends. You're gonna see yourself rounding that buoy. You're gonna see yourself doing all of these things beyond your expectations and doing them so beautifully and so well. And that's what you want your mind to focus on. So the parts that you're really anxious about, cold water, visualize yourself letting all that water into your wetsuit. Visualize yourself that feeling. You wanna physically try to feel cold for that. And breathe through it, overcome it, tell yourself all the positive things. Your brain is the most powerful part of all of this. So you've done all these hours of training, all that, yeah, that's super, super important. Your brain is going to be what makes you successful in this. So take that time to even make a list. Okay, there's 15 things that I am like freaked out about for this Ironman or open water swim or whatever it is that you're doing. Pick 3, and you're going to spend 5 minutes and you're going to focus on those 3 things and you're going to do them successfully in your mind. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I mean, on that note, for those of us going to Panama City, will the buoys be out on Friday? Like, will we? Because I think that's like having to visualize what that distance looks like in the ocean a couple weeks ago. Like,
Yeah, the buoys will be out.
okay.
Yeah. So again, your coach should take you into the water the day before. In South Africa, the swell is so big that you can't cycle buoys off, and you're cycling off hotels on the beach because if you're in the trough of the swell, you need to use a hotel to cycle.
Or you're sighting off the pier going
Or you're
out,
sighting-
There's no pier.
which is.
No, there's not yet.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
this is South Africa.
JK.
For the fall there is, but not.
Yeah, that's right. But we'll go through it. So you'll get in the water, you'll spend a lot of time out there, you're going to get used to the water, get used to how to sight, etc. Okay guys, we're going to go through the last thing and then we're going to go get in the pool. This is basically what we're going to practice. This is the fun part of what we're going to practice, and this is going to make you a quicker swimmer, and this is drafting. Has anyone used drafting before, knows how to draft, the different positions in drafting, been drafted badly, been drafted well, been drafted badly? So drafting is a skill. It's exactly the same as cycling. The report came out recently that drafting properly in cycling can save you up to 38% energy. That's what came out. 38%. Okay. Swimming, they believe it is. There are 2 positions that you can draft in swimming. I'm going to go through them with you now. Position A, which is behind the person. I'm going to show you how to do that. They believe it's up to 15%. And position B, they believe is about 12%. Okay, so it's not as much as cycling, but still 15%. And seconds, they've actually counted seconds, that leaves between 6 and 8 seconds per 100 if you're in position A, and about 5 seconds in position B. Okay, so it's massive. 5 seconds per 100 over an Ironman, or 6 to 8 seconds per 100 over an Ironman. I have used drafting for so many years, and I often will pick the guy I'm going to draft because I know who he is, and I trust him, and I don't even sight. I'll get onto his feet and just follow him through the entire course. So we're going to go through that now. That's going to be one of the biggest things we're going to practice in the pool. Maybe a little bit of buoy sighting as well. Just get rid of all of this.
So with drafting, say you're at a race and you don't know anybody else that's there racing, so you have no clue who's a good swimmer, who's not a good swimmer.
Yep.
About how long should you take to kind of figure out who that person might be? Like, is it give it 500 yards, give it the first couple buoys? Like, at what point should you start to figure out, like, okay, there's someone I can draft?
I'm going to use the cycling analogy for you here, which works quite nicely for me. So I arrive at an Ironman race, I'll slot myself into some 1 hour bunch. In that bunch, there's probably going to be 50% of people that I should be drafting, or 50% that are lying, I shouldn't be there anyway, and I'm just wasting my time. Now, how are you going to know that? Is find a pair of feet. Try and find a pair of feet that aren't. So, like, drafting with me is lovely, I don't kick at all. So you just got these 2 dragging feet there. Find a pair of feet, sit behind them, see how you feel. To test, the same as a bike, to test if you're behind the right person, pull out next to them, don't pass them, and see how much harder it feels to swim there. So what I often do is, I'll be behind someone and I'll be thinking, because it's not like a bike, you can't see power watts, you're not checking the watch, and I think, man, this guy's going too slow for me. And the next thing I pull out of the draft, and I realize, and he starts to pull away, I'm like, no, he's not going too slow for me, I'm back straight. So it's kind of, it's a bit of a play thing, and once you find your guy, like when you do that scenario, and you've been sitting there comfortably, and you pull out, and he starts to pull away from you, you get back on his feet and you stay there. And you just trust that you trust him that he's gonna sight for you. I think, and again, I'm lucky because I'm starting like with the better swimmers up front, and someone like you, I think in my entire triathlon career, starting in that group, I've had maybe 1 or 2 guys take me off course. But the rest of the guys, they know what they're doing, they're sighting. I just slot in behind him and I let him pull me through the swim course. Now, there's a lot of etiquette that you're going to go through in the pool on drafting, being a good drafter and draftee, which is important. And if I have someone drafting on my feet that knows what they're doing, I have no problem with that. Like, he can sit there forever. And there's rules, like, you touch someone's toes to know, listen, I'm here. But you don't swim over their ankles, or, land your hand on their calf. That guy's going to get a kick in the face, because he doesn't know what he's doing, he's irritating me now. But if someone's touching my toes and I know there's a draft there, I'm going to leave it. Drafting A is something that I recommend to all my guys. Drafting B is a very difficult position. So let me go through them very quickly. Okay, so obviously, I need to bring this down a bit.
Make it bigger.
Yeah.
Please.
So we've got swimmer over here, and he's swimming this way. So basically what he's doing is exactly the same as what would happen on a bicycle. He's creating a draft zone. Now, there's 2 spaces you can be in the draft zone. One is position B, and you'll watch the ITU guys. They do position B really well. But to do position B, this is a really small person.
Not to scale.
Not to scale. So position B is about there. To do this type of drafting, position B, both these people need to know what they're doing. It's a very specific skill. So if Bonnie comes and stands here, we'll show you in the pool. So so I'm going to come down.
There's timing to it.
Okay, so it's literally, I'm sitting back here, and I'm literally drafting off her wake. She's creating a wake, and I'm sitting with my hips on her wake. But I'm so close to her that if she doesn't know that I know what I'm doing, I'm going to irritate her. In an ITU bunch with these guys, that's all they can do, because they're not going to sit in a straight line. These guys know what they're doing. And they'll get elbows, they'll get all types of things to the face. As an age group, I generally recommend don't try and do deep drafting. It's very tough. You can practice in the pool if you want, but it's not easy. And again, if I was swimming with a mate of mine, that we knew how to do this, like my mate James, we know how to do this, I would do it with him. So Zach and I could practice it, and we could get into a race and go, okay, we're going to do a bit of A, and we're going to do a bit of B on both sides, and as long as we're working together, it's fine. But if you swim up to 99% of triathletes and try to draft them, they're going to punch you. Because they're going to get a little bit irritated. Okay, so Let's scrap the bead drafting and focus on the
And
A.
that one doesn't give you as much benefit as well, right?
Yeah, so the reason that the IT guys have to do it is because not everyone can sit in position A.
Right.
So the best position to be in an ITU race is the second position sitting in position A. Okay, you've got the best draft, and you actually, in an ITU race, if you've got guys doing the B draft, yeah, same as cycling, the peloton in cycling, you're creating it bigger. And this guy's benefit is probably bigger now because he's got the two guys in position B. Okay. So, drafting in A position. Let the guy know you're there. Okay? And that is a toe touch. So wait for his feet, just like a little touch. And I mean, I'll do it to you in the pool. Okay? Just a little touch. And if he knows what he's doing, he's not going to be irritated by the touch. Okay? Don't swim up his back. Okay? If you are being drafted and the person knows what they're doing, leave them there. That's fine. If they don't know what they're doing, kick them in the head. I'm sorry, but it's going to irritate you to a point where that's where you're going to get to. So you need to be a good drafter and a good draftee, and we're going to practice those things in the pool. Okay. Has anyone like practiced drafting before or gone through the different techniques and stuff?
Yeah, I think for people who are not strong swimmers like myself, I'm just telling Scott that drafting in the back of the pack can be not so effective. Or it's a limited duration. I mean, draft on some guy for a while, and they leave you, or you notice that they're taking you off in left field, and you abandon them and pick up someone else. So it's not like it is in your groups, where there's synchronization. It's more mass chaos.
Yeah.
And so I always just tell myself, okay, here's a guy, I'm gonna
sit on his feet.
Yeah, get on his feet until he leaves me, or I think he's going in the wrong direction. So it's just I don't know. It's important, yes, and for swimmers, getting a little benefit is important, but I think you gotta be careful too.
Yeah, so drafting, it has massive benefit to everyone across the field because you're getting that 5 seconds, and especially the triathlete, because you've got a whole day, you've got to get out the water. So any gains you can get, you're going to get them. But it is easier, obviously, the further up the field that you are.
It's just sloppy. It just gets so sloppy in the back of the pack.
Yeah.
People swimming over each other. I mean, it's like a war zone in the back. You don't know that, but
it's still a war zone.
It's not so tidy.
It's still a war zone up front, it's just more respectful.
You're playing Queensberry rules.
So one of the things that I do with a lot of my guys is I try to pair guys up in races. So when we go to Panama, we're going to have groups, and the best thing you can do is to actually pair yourself up with someone that you know you can draft off of and work together. You're very similar speeds. Same on the bike. I mean, if Zach and I got on the bike and we said we're going to go and do a 40 miler and we're going to share the front, we're going to go a lot faster than if both of us are not sharing the front. Try to do the same with an athlete or a swimmer that's similar to you that you know. So I will do that. I've got a buddy of mine that's coming to race PCB with us from San Francisco. Him and I have done that for 20 years of racing triathlon, and it saved us 2 to 3 minutes. It also keeps other idiots away from you because it's just the two of us working together. So I think it's an important skill to learn, and no matter how fast you are or where you're sitting, try and find someone. Like in our group, we've got 22 people going down to PCB. I'll pair you guys up. We'll practice that swim, and even if it lasts a third of the swim, it's still a benefit. Yeah. It's still a benefit. Okay. So we're gonna go to the pool now. We're gonna practice some drafting. I'm gonna show you. There's one other thing just before we go. We're talking about other swimmers. So one of the things, and this is to Mark's point, is you're going to have swimmers that are going to be swimming skew. And it's the most frustrating thing, especially if you're in the back of the pack and I'm sighting. So if I'm sighting the buoy and I've got my sight and Bonnie comes up here and she keeps pushing me off my sight. You have 3 options.
You ready?
Yeah, you have 3 options. Okay. And you need to implement one of these 3 options very quickly because it's going to irritate you, your heart rate's going to go up, it's going to cost you energy. Okay. You want to stay on this buoy, you don't want to go where Bonnie's going. Okay. So you've got 3 options. Okay. Actually you've got 4. We're not going to, you guys don't need to do an option 4. So option 1 is I slow down, I let Bonnie go ahead of me, and I start again. Okay? Simple option, going to cost you 10 seconds overall in the whole race. Option 2, I speed up to try and get ahead of her while she swims over my feet. Not a great option. Heart rate spikes. You're probably not going any faster anyway. So I would always go for option A over option B. There are the 2 other options for our more experienced swimmers. One is the Watercolor Hip Push. Basically, you push the person on the top of the hip and you just push them sideways. What happens is they will lose their swim. You don't even have to change your stroke. They will stop and you will end up 1.5 meters ahead of them, and now they're out of your way and they're going to pass you at the bottom of your feet. So you can do that mid-stroke. You don't have to slow down, you just grab the hip and push it, and it goes away. If you really irritate this person, do something called the rollover, which is basically while I'm swimming, she keeps swimming into me, I go, okay, screw you. So you take your left arm, you put it over her back, and you swim over and you let her go that way. Okay. So you see the ITU pros do that? Someone's irritating you and they'll do a rollover?
Really?
No. I wouldn't do that unless you're prepared to have an open water fight. Somebody?
I've got one more thing for you guys. So the Ozark Outdoor Foundation has sponsored this, and part of this is to kind of get awareness out for the Oz Mile Swim, which is the Walmart Oz Mile Swim. So I have cards for you guys. That is the website. Registration is open. So check it out, and there'll be a ton of information. It's the last Saturday in September, last Sunday in September, Sunday, September 25th. It's a lot of buses. And it's going to be a whole weekend of festivities. We've got a Friday night dinner, and yes, that's there. Saturday open swim, and then Sunday the actual race. Sunday, September 25th.
Guys, sorry, just a quick one. You can't walk through the.
You have to go outside, and the back door is open for the pool.